Yes.
Hello.
I'll read it. Read this. Yeah.
Okay. Avatar
Meher Baba
Meher
ki
Baba
jai.
ki jai. Let's start with the 3 couplets.
Yeah. 3 of Meher
Oh, really?
Baba's favorite couplets of Hafiz.
Can you hear me? No.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, you mean
Yes,
here?
we can hear you.
The screen is slightly gone up. You have to bring it down. Yeah.
It's on actually.
Hello, Jai Baba.
Yeah, it's on, but I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's
Just
going
just
here.
1 minute. We can hear you, but Karthik का speaker नहीं चल रहा.
तो
Okay,
उससे
आप
क्या
पढ़िए,
फर्क
prayer
पड़ता है?
पढ़िए.
अच्छा,
Yeah, let him read. Yeah, please.
Your screen
ये
is.
तो है.
ये
Put on
देख,
the screen, Karthik.
ये है ना, ये देख.
Karthik.
Oh.
Pull that down.
Karthik, shall I read 7 realities?
Yeah. Please.
Everything.
Please.
Yeah. Yeah. These 7 realities: existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following 7 realities. Number 1, the only real existence is that of the one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. Number 2, the only real love is the love for this infinity God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. Number 3, the only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself, are sacrificed. Number 4, the only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. Number 5, the only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so-called bad, in saint and in so-called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand, without expectation of reward. When compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, to try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feelings for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. Number 6, the only real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. Number 7, the only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Yeah, Jai Baba. Thank you. Thank you for that. So we are reading, we'll continue the reading of Mehera, our Saturday schedule. I will just bring up, yeah, so we've done 1 read till now, and that was basically up to page 29. We did chapter 1 and chapter 2. So let's continue from that point. And any volunteers to read?
Okay, Karthik, I'll read because I have to actually go off at 8:15.
Okay. All right. Any, I know we exchanged a few texts on this now that your mic is on. Did you get details of that particular Aarti that was composed by Baba in for Upasni Maharaj?
Yeah, so I spoke to Mr. Gadekar, Dr. Gadekar, but he is yet to find it out. But it is from
Oh,
the
okay.
in that book I mentioned to you.
No,
Uh,
no, that surely is not the case, right? So what you shared with me doesn't look like is the example, because it talks
no,
about that's
not the
house.
example.
That's
Sorry, not the example. The book is Mehera Meher.
yeah, that's David Fenster's book. Yes.
So the mention of the Darthi is in that book.
Oh, okay. So the Pune center might have that. So the next time you're there, maybe you can
Yes,
get it. And anybody having access to that book, we can check it up. It's a 3-volume set by David Fenster. Beautiful book. I have not read it.
it's
I
in
mean,
the
I've heard
volume.
of people say it's a very good book.
Yes, it's very good, and it's in volume one. That's what I also heard, and I will
Okay.
definitely try the first moment I reach Pune Center, or I can get it from someone.
Okay. Sure. Thank you. So let's start with the reading then. So we are covering the period of 1915 to 1921, Mehra's life in Pune. Go ahead, Ashokji.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Pune, 1915-1921. In 1915, Mehera, with her mother and sister, came to live in Pune. During that year, Meher Baba, then known as Meherwan, met the remaining four perfect masters of the time: Narayan Maharaj, Tajuddin Baba, Sai Baba, and Upasni Maharaj. Upasni Maharaj, on seeing Baba, flung a stone at him, hitting Baba on the forehead where Babajan had kissed him in 1914. And thus began Baba's return to normal consciousness. During the following years, Baba stayed mostly in Pune. He managed a theatrical company for 2 months, worked in his father's tea shop and toddy shop. All the time, constantly visiting Babajan and sometimes Upasni Maharaj. This is about his childhood. In 1918, Baba opened a toddy shop in Kasba Pet in Pune city, and the same year Sai Baba dropped his body. In 1919, Baba's family moved from Pumpkin House to nearby Baba House in Pune, where Baba knocked his forehead on a stone in his small room there. This knocking of his forehead had first began after Upasni Maharaj had flung the stone at Baba in 1915. At the toddy shop, Merwanji now began to attract a group of spiritual seekers, some of whom later became his mandali. Throughout 1920 and 21, Baba's frequent visits to Pasni Maharaj continued, culminating in a 6-month continuous stay at Sokori from July to December 1921. By the end of this stay, Baba had been unveiled as the avatar of the age. It was in Junagadh when he was 40 years old that my father had a fall from a horse that was to change our lives. In this fall, he hurt his ear. He went to Bombay to the Masina hospital to consult a doctor about it. Surgery was recommended, but before having it, my father decided to visit his parents in Pune. His mother suggested that he also consult their family doctor there in Pune, and to please her, he did. This doctor told my father that the operation was so minor that he could easily do it then and there. My father believed him, and he had the operation in this doctor's house in a small, ill equipped, and dusty surgery. His parents did not inform, sorry, his parents did not inform my mother, who was in Junagadh, about the operation. The incision became septic, and my dear father suddenly passed away. My poor mother was, sorry, my poor mother was absolutely heartbroken, and so were we. The last time we had seen my father, he had been strong and healthy, and now suddenly, because of a careless operation, he was gone. My shock was terrible. The shock was terrible for my mother, and after this, we rarely saw my father's family. Many years later, I heard that Baba's father, Shriarji, had, had helped to carry my father's body to the Tower of Silence, and that when we returned home that day, Shriarji had said that he had never seen anyone with such a fine, strong, healthy body as my father. My ma,
Sorry.
yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I understand. The screen is a little, I mean, the text is a little short, but it's good. My mother now had to return to her family house in Pune. I was 8 years old when, at the invitation of my maternal uncle, Ashidir, we moved into his house, a very big bungalow in the vicinity of Bund Garden, where my grandparents and two maternal uncles, their wives and children lived. Ardashir was the eldest uncle and head of the household, and he always was very kind and generous to us. He owned a successful soft drink factory in the Sachapir street of Pune. Another of my mother's brothers, Colonel M.S. Irani, was a surgeon serving in a hospital in Eden, in the Middle East, as the First World War had then started. He was very fond of my mother, so when my father passed away, he took leave and came quickly to Pune to comfort and console her. When he arrived, my mother clung to him and sobbed her heart out. My mother was so shocked and heartbroken by my father's passing that she took to constant prayers morning, noon, and night. She would walk alone with our spaniel down to the river, which was not far from our house, and there, near a well, she would light an oil lamp and offer flowers and pray. When she later heard of Babajan from her sister Freni Masi, she would be seated by Babajan's side every evening. Now that we are settled in Pune, we became day girls at the same school, the convent of Jesus and Mary, where we had been boarders, and I loved to hear the nun tell stories about Jesus and his disciples. When I was 9 years old, on the first anniversary of my father's death, my Navjot, initiating me into the Zoroastrian faith, was performed. One day,
One second.
oh, sorry.
Hold on. Yeah, please.
Yeah,
One day.
yeah. One day, when I was 10 or 11 years old, one of my school friends named Zina came running to me at recess time when children were playing after lunch and said, Mehera, let's go to Babajan. She's very great. Whatever we ask for, she will give us. You ask for something and I'll ask for something. Come on, let's go and see her. Yes, but what about the school bell? I asked. I thought Babajan was always seated under a neem tree some distance from our school and we might be late for class. Today, Babajan is sitting right outside. She was so near that we won't be late for class. Zina replied. So, together, hand in hand, we ran out of the school grounds and towards Babajan, who was seated behind the convent wall. But as we came near to her, I began to feel very shy. I said to my friend, how can I go to Babajan? I have never thought of asking for anything. I have nothing to ask for. You go first. But
So if I
Zina,
can pause you here for a minute,
yeah,
I wanted to pause you right after the Navjot. Anybody knows what is the exact process that's followed in a Navjot? Is it? I think that's when you tie the what is that? Kashti or
Kashti,
this
Kashti,
Kashti, right? Yeah.
Kashti. Yeah.
Kushti or correct. And that I did not know till literally now that it's done both for men and women. So that's interesting. So anybody knows more on that, please share. Yeah, I think that's one thing.
yeah,
Okay.
that's a good observation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, But Zina replied, "Never mind, think hard." And when we reached Baba Zan, Zina knelt before her and made her request. Then it was my turn, and I still could not think of anything to ask for. But I went very shyly up to Baba Jan and knelt before her. She looked at me sweetly and said, "What is it, my child?" Still, I did not know what to ask for because I had everything. I started thinking very hard, and as I looked across the road, I saw a horse and carriage pass by. The thought came to me that I would like a horse to ride because my father's death, my mother had kept only a carriage horse. A horse needs to be looked after, and he did not, and she did not want the bother of more servants and more work. So I told Babajan, I would like a horse. Now that sounds a bit childish, but at the time it did not seem childish to me. I loved horses. And Babajan looked at me, gave a slight, very sweet smile, and nodded her head. Then she looked up towards the sky. Yes, he will be very beautiful. You will get a horse, and the world will see him and love him. She spoke very softly and in Urdu, and I could not hear her very well, but those words I caught. Then she put me and told me, "Now you can go, my child." I was glad to leave as I was feeling very, very, very shy, but I also felt happy because I thought I would have a beautiful horse that many would admire when I rode it. Just then the school bell rang, so my friend and I caught hands and we ran back to school. I completely forgot that I had asked Babajan for a horse.
Yeah.
Then one evening, some months after this meeting, after I had come home from school and was playing gilli danda in our compound with my cousins, my aunt said to me, "Mehera, go and see what a beautiful horse your mother has bought." I thought she was teasing me, but she repeated it. "Go to the stables and see." I ran to the stables and I was overjoyed to see there this very, very beautiful horse. I could not believe my eyes. He was so beautiful. He was snow white and not a speck of color anywhere. His nose and his skin were pink, not black. One of his eyes was blue and the other was black, and he was very well fed and well kept. In the stable, he started a prance and shake his head and mane, and I knew he was a spirited horse. I was even happier as I am fond of very quiet riding horses. My mother told me that she had been returning home in a Tonga from an outing and had seen a crowd of people. She she stopped, and in the middle of this crowd there was a beautiful white horse which she liked so much that she immediately bought him and had him brought home. Just 2 days after the horse arrived, I began to think, why am I not riding this horse? I love to ride, but since my father's death, I had not had the chance. I knew that I would not be allowed to ride this white horse as he was new and very spirited, and my elders would be afraid that I would have a fall. But my father had taught me well, and I was not at all afraid. All our saddles and bridles had been brought to Pune after my father's death and dumped in a big storeroom in my grandparents' house. So I went quietly out inside, found a saddle and bridle, and had the groom saddle the white horse. He thought I had permission to ride, but I had not. He helped me mount, and I quietly rode the horse on a out a back gateway to so my elders would not see me. But my aunt did see me, and though she called me back, I kept riding down to a lovely and sandy brittle path near Bund Garden, along which the British like to ride. Then I tried out this horse's paces, trotting and cantering, and after a long, lovely ride, I came home safely. So my elders saw that I could manage the horse, and they allowed me to ride him again. I used to give him treats of sugar, so he came to know me.
Okay, do we want to rotate
Yeah,
the
yeah,
reading? Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
will be great. Yeah, thanks.
Any volunteers or nominations?
Karthik, I can read.
Please go ahead. Hey, Baba.
Jai Baba. A few years passed, and my mother bought as an investment a very beautiful house on Todiwala Road in Pune, which had been rented to a European couple, a Mr. and Mrs. Mandy. A little later, perhaps it was in 1919, after we had been staying in my grandparents' house for 4 years, my eldest uncle, Ardashir, died. He had been very sympathetic towards my mother, but with his death, she no longer felt comfortable in her family's house. So, when our tenants returned to England, we moved into number 9, Todiwala Road. I was about 12 years old. It was a very lovely house. The house was large with separate servants' quarters and stables. The garden was twice the size of Mehera with several hundred beautiful trees and a broad shaded drive up to the house from the road. On returning from school, we could feel the coolness of our garden as we turned into the drive. The house was at the end of Tadiwala Road, a very good and quiet locality. Nearby were fields, and it was very quiet and dark at night. We had a carriage horse, the white horse, and our pet water spaniel. Our neighbors were some Europeans, the Raja of Kolhapur, and a wealthy family from Bombay, the Todiwalas, after whom the road had been named and who later came into my story. One day, while we were living at Todiwala Road, I remember riding the white horse across a low lying field near our house towards the raised road. As we came close to the road, he started to lunge and rear. I jumped off and landed quite safely in the field. And what happened next was this. The saddle immediately slipped off the horse. The girth had broken, and had the horse not reared when he did, I would not have jumped off and could have had a very bad fall later. I managed to catch the reins, but the horse was too strong and excited for me to hold for long. Fortunately, at the moment, two servants from the nearby houses of Raja of Kolhapur and some Europeans came running up. So I remounted him, and they very kindly led me home riding bareback.
Just to pause you a bit, so there's a lot of horse riding specific terms. So again, I don't know much, but all of these terms are linked to, I think, the riding. So there's bridle, saddle, groom. Groom is basically the person who's looking after the horse. Then there's cantering, is a type of speed, I think, trotting, whatever. Right. So a lot of horse related terms. So if anybody knows more, please throw some light. Otherwise, I mean, it's just an input I had. Yeah. Now this, you can start from now this. Yeah.
Now this white horse was very mischievous. He had a friend, a carriage horse from next door, and my white horse would somehow get loose and visit him. Then both of them would prance and frolic around our compound and around other people's too. This would upset our neighbors, and that would upset my mother. However, because of my schoolwork, piano lessons, piano practice, theory of music lessons, and other things I had to do, I had very little time to ride. Since I only rode the white horse a few times, my mother decided that he should be useful and learn how to draw a carriage. So our groom would tie a plank behind the horse to get him used to pulling a weight. One day he even let me stand on this plank and off we went across a field. It was such fun.
Okay, there's some pencil drawings. I'll probably see it up close.
So these are drawn by Mehra, is it?
Yes, pencil drawings by Mehra of literary
Wow.
heroines done when she was about 14 years old and living on Todiwala Road, Pune. Shown here actual size. Lady Rowena from Ivanhoe, that's the first one. B is Miranda playing chess. Okay, and C is Rebecca. And D is Catherine the Shrew. Okay. Okay.
So who are these ladies? They are
All
film
literary
stars or
personalities.
literary personalities? Okay.
Literary characters. Literally.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so
Characters. Correct.
okay. Let's continue. My mother.
My mother later built a second smaller house on the foundation of a broken down house in our compound. We moved there when it was finished and rented out the main bungalow. My mother also bought three small cottages: White House, Cozy Cottage, and Beehive in Mahabaleshwar, a hill station between Pune and Bombay. As a child, I knew Mahabaleshwar well and later spent much time there with Baba. My mother often took my sister and me to stay in Cozy Cottage. We now changed schools from the Convent of Jesus and Mary, which was far from our new house, to St. Helens. At school, I loved Shakespeare's plays, especially The Tempest, stories of saints, the novels of writers like Dickens and Sir Walter Scott, and playing the piano. But I was never top of my class. I much preferred playing games with my friends to schoolwork.
That ends chapter 2. And with that, the period up to 1921. So now it's early 1922 to May 1924. Chapter 3. Yeah, yes, Sanjay ji, boliye.
Chapter 3.
Yeah. Just a little thing that I recall. We went to Mahabaleshwar once with our kids, and we stayed in a hotel. And then when we met Dr. Vasudev at Panchgani, I think many of you must be knowing him.
Correct.
He said, he said, where are you staying? I'm staying in that hotel. I told the name of the hotel, and he said that property belonged to Mehra's family. So probably
Oh,
this is the property.
wow.
Nice. And that is now converted into a hotel. Yeah. Jai Baba.
So one of the three houses that she mentions.
Yeah, yeah. So in
Three
Mahabaleshwar, they
cottages.
had a house. Yeah. Jai
Beehive,
Baba.
Cozy Cottage, White House.
Yes, yes.
So,
Wow.
I have a question, Sanjay. What is the name of the hotel?
I'll have to recall. I do not, otherwise, I would have just said. I do not
Correct.
remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a problem. Siva, you want to continue for some more time?
Yeah.
How are you feeling, by the way? You were unwell last week. All well?
Yeah, I got hospitalized for 3 days.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the fever did not subside.
Oh.
Now much better.
All right. Take care. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. So, chapter 3, Awaiting Baba's Call, early 1922 to May 1924. In 1922, Baba, who was still known as Meherwanji, began his work as Avatar of the Age. He spent the first part of the year mostly at a hut on Ferguson College Road, Pune. During this time, he was given the name Meher Baba. He also visited Upasni Maharaj at Sakori, and at the end of May 1922, Meher Baba set out walking to Bombay with his intimate chosen men for the stay in Manzil Imam. In October 1922, Baba, Baba made a brief trip to Sakori, and this was the last time that he visited Upasni Maharaj's ashram while Maharaj was physically present. A year later, in May 1923, the phase of Manzil Imam was finished, Baba attended the wedding of Mehera's sister, Freni, to Rastum K. Irani and stayed at Meherabad with some of his mandali. While making short visits to Meherabad between June 1923 to March 1924, Baba travelled extensively in India and also made his first visit to Persia, which is Iran. In late March 1924, Baba returned to Meherabad for several months, and these few months were known as the phase of Ghamela Yoga, hard physical labor for his men mandali. Daulat Mai's faith grows, Pune 1922. As I have said, my mother first heard of Baba from her sister Freni Masi, Padri's mother, who told her that Baba Jan had kissed Baba and that he was enlightened. Of course, my mother did not understand that then that Baba was the avatar, but she had real love and feeling for him. In those days, Baba had few followers, and very few from the Zoroastrian community. On the contrary, most of the Zoroastrians were against Baba, and although Baba was so pure and nothing was left unsaid about him. So it was very difficult at this time to have conviction and to follow Baba. Human beings are such that they can take their minds to the lowest level and also to the highest level to become God. Baba at that time was not settled at Meherabad. He sometimes came to Pune from Bombay for a day or two, and then he stayed at one or the other of his lovers' houses. It was then that my mother had Baba's darshan for the first time. After that, when Baba came to Pune, Vishnu Master, one of Baba's early mandali, would ride to our house on his bicycle to let my mother know that Baba had arrived. When she was not with Baba, my mother spent her evenings with Baba Jan. She had not told my sister or me about Baba, and she did not take us with her as we were still in school and busy with our school work and friends. During Baba's visits to Pune, he gave darshan, and his lovers sang devotional songs and offered garlands and coconuts to him. One day, when the program was over and all had left, Baba turned to see my mother still seated by his side. He asked her, "You are still waiting? Do you have something to ask me?" My mother had not come with any questions in her mind. She just loved to be in Baba's presence, but she felt that Baba must have a reason for asking her this. Baba gave her time to think. The first thought that came into her mind was that my sister was not at all well. Firoja, later called Freni, was not eating and she was feeling very depressed. So my mother told Baba about this. Take her to Udwada, Baba told her. Udwada is in Gujarat and is a very important place of pilgrimage for Zoroastrians. It is here that the sacred fire was brought from Persia to India, and since then it has never been extinguished. Going to Udwada was thought to be a little old-fashioned, a pilgrimage that only the very orthodox made. So my mother was very surprised that Baba wanted her to do this when she had full love and faith in him, but she replied, "Yes, Baba." After some time, Baba turned again to find my mother still sitting there. He asked her, "Do you want to ask me something else?" Again she felt that Baba must have a reason for asking her this, and this time that that came into her mind was her neighbor's daughter, Miss Todiwala's plight. As I have said, the Todiwala family, after whom the road in which we now lived was named, had a house near ours. They were a very wealthy Bombay family who spent several months in Pune every year during the racing season. Our families were very friendly, and while they were in Pune, my mother often visited them. One day it happened that the daughter of the Todiwalas, was alone when my mother called, and this woman opened her heart to my mother. She told her that she was almost 40 years old, and although all the rest of her brothers and sisters were married, her family had not arranged a marriage for her. In those days in India, all marriages were arranged by the parents for their children. This poor woman was very worried about her future when her parents would no longer be there to provide her with a home. On hearing this, my mother had felt very sad and concerned about Miss Todiwala's situation, and she now explained it to Baba. Take her to Udwada, Baba told my mother. Yes, Baba. My mother replied. Although my mother was wondering how going to Udwada would help my sister and Miss Todiwala, she did not hesitate to obey him. So my mother invited Miss Todiwala to accompany us there, and she very happily accepted our invitation. My mother did not tell Miss Todiwala that it was Baba's order, as she was a Zoroastrian. Udwada is near the sea, and it has a beautiful beach where children love to play. A long pilgrimage where there is not thought to be necessary, and most people stay only a couple of days. Pilgrims go to the big fire temple where they offer sandalwood to the sacred fire, pray, and have darshan of the fire. That is considered pilgrimage. So when we arrived in Udwada, we went to the fire temple, offered our sandalwood and prayers, and had darshan of the sacred fire. On our second day there, we noticed that my sister's appetite had returned and that she was very cheerful. In fact, she was well again. My mother felt so happy, and she realized that the real medicine that had restored her daughter's health was not the pilgrimage, but her obedience to Baba's orders. 1 month after our return to Pune, Miss Todiwala was still single, and my mother began to worry. What to do? She is still not married. Then, quite suddenly, this woman, who was almost 40 years old and who had not had a proposal in her life, received an offer of marriage and was soon married. My mother felt so happy, and through these incidents, her faith and love for Baba grew. Baba showed my mother that when you obey him, he sees to everything. This all happened because mother obeyed Baba implicitly. That is the experience my mother had obeying Baba. It was after this that my mother took us to Sakori, where I first saw Baba. She could not take us to Baba as he was not settled in one place. But she wanted us to be in a spiritual atmosphere, and she knew there were other young girls at Sakori. Opposition. It was by beloved Baba's grace that we had left my grandparents' house when we did and moved to Todiwala Road. As my mother's love for Baba and Baba Jan grew, so did the opposition from her family grow. Her family had no understanding of spiritual things and were, like the Zoroastrian community at that time, not at all for Baba. So it would have been very difficult for my mother to freely go to Baba, and Baba Jan had still been staying in that house. My uncle, Colonel Merwan Sorab Irani, he had the same initials as Baba, who, as I mentioned before, was serving in an Aden hospital, would return to Pune for some months on leave every 2 years. This brother was a very fine man who moved in the best society. Out of all his family, he loved my mother the most, and she loved him. As I have said, when my father died, he immediately took leave and came to Pune from Aden to console my mother, and from that time he gave her much helpful advice in financial matters and also loving support She always followed his advice and looked up to him. He now returned to Aden to hear from our family that my mother was visiting Baba John and also Meher Baba. When he was in Pune, the family poisoned his ears. Daulat is sitting on the street with an old Muslim woman and even going to this Parsi Meher Baba. They told him. My uncle came to Todiwala Road feeling very upset and said to my mother, I hear you are visiting sadhus. Why do you want to do that? Why do you need to? Are you short of money? He also had no understanding of spirituality, and he felt that one went to saints only to ask for material benefits. He continued, all this time I have looked after you and loved you. Why do you go after these saints and sadhus? We have Zoroaster to pray to. If you want our daughters to be married, I will look after that. I am friendly with many influential people and I will see to everything. My mother explained, I am only going to them for spiritual reasons. I find peace being with them. Colonel Irani became very angry. He told her, they are false and frauds. There's nothing spiritual about them and they will swindle you. My mother replied, you may say anything you like, but in this I will not listen to you. I will not give this up. He was so upset that at this point he left his chair and turning around saw Baba's lovely photo sitting on the piano. Somehow my uncle recognized Baba. Who is this? He asked. Isn't that the one they call Meher Baba? Mehera. Yes, that is he, and we love him and follow him. Don't you know he is the ringleader of a gang? My uncle asked. He is a disciple of Upasni Maharaj and he is God realized. My mother told him. It had happened that my uncle, when in Aden, had bailed an Irani out of jail who was being held on some charge. Being an Irani himself, my uncle had felt embarrassed for this man when he had heard of his imprisonment. This person had been a Baba follower from the very beginning, but he did not have a good reputation, and this added to my uncle's already bad impression of Baba and his followers. He did not know who Baba was and that he was for both saints and also sinners. He really believed that my mother was making a terrible mistake, and because of this deep love for her, his deep love for her, he uh, he did his best to dissuade her from following Baba. But my mother would not budge. I will stick to Meher Baba, she told him. I love him and want to serve him and be in his ashram. My uncle left very upset, and we did not see him again at that time. Later on, sometime after my mother and I had come to stay with Baba at Mehrabad, my uncle came to see us there. Baba asked my mother and me to meet him. My uncle was amazed to see us living in such a simple, quiet place. He was standing beside his car with a cane in his hand. What are you doing in this wilderness, Daulat? He asked my mother. There are no trees, no compound, nothing. How can you bring your young daughter here with all these men around? Still having no understanding of who Baba is, he demanded that we return to Pune with him. But my mother was very strong and we stayed on at Mehrabad. By this time, my uncle had returned from Aden to settle in Pune. His marriage had not been a fortunate one, and his wife had gone back to live with her family. He loved my mother and wanted us all to live with him and be his family. And he thought that when we girls married, he would have son in laws too. Not only did he want to take my mother away because he felt she had been duped, he also felt very hurt that she had chosen to stay with Baba instead of him. He felt she no longer loved him He had no idea how fortunate we were to be with Baba. Because of all these feelings, my uncle began to publish derogatory articles about Baba in the newspapers and Gujarati magazines. My mother felt very upset about her brother's behavior, but Baba told her that her brother was in fact helping him, saying, "This is all according to my will. No one would be interested if he wrote favorable things about me, but by writing against me, my name is spread throughout."
Okay, let's rotate reading. Mahu, you want to read? Merkiran, anybody?
Yeah, I'll read for
Okay,
15
sure.
minutes or
Go
so.
ahead.
Yeah, I can read, but I read after him.
Yeah, after Sanjay. Sure. Thanks, Mahu.
Okay, yeah. So, where do I start now?
Yeah, Baba comes to Meherabad.
Yeah. Now we go back a little to the time in 1922 when I first saw Baba in Sakori. Baba's aunt, Daula Masi, Shri Mai's sister, okay, also visited Upasni Maharaj's ashram while we were there. On seeing my sister, who was then 19 years old, she asked my mother if she wanted her elder daughter to be married. Daula Masi had in mind Rostam Kaikhushru Irani, Gulmai's son and Adi K. Irani's brother from Ahmednagar. My mother asked her, "Is he following the path? This path?" By which she meant, was he spiritually inclined? "He is a Baba lover and a fine person. If you see the boy, you will like him. He is in Bombay with Baba in Manzile Meem." Daula Masi told my mother it was a very nice match for Piroza. These Iranis are a very good family and are well respected in Ahmednagar. So it is Baba's secretary's brother, right?
I'm
For which
not
this
sure.
girl is being seen. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Gulmai.
Is that
Adi K. Irani. Adi K.
Irani?
Irani. Yeah. Adi K. Irani
Uh,
was Baba's secretary. So this Rishta, as we say, is for his brother. Yeah.
but there are two Adi K. Iranis, right?
No,
No,
no.
there
One
is
was
Aditya Irani Jr. and Aditya Irani Senior.
Correct.
In this
Yeah.
junction of time, he is not a secretary, Adi Senior. He's getting ready to go and live with Baba in Manzilimim. Yeah, which is a very interesting time
Yeah.
that he was training them. Very, very
Yeah. Yeah.
strict training.
Very
Yeah.
intensive training. Yeah, very
Yeah.
difficult.
It is
At
before
that
before
time,
he
he
became his
wasn't-
secretary. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for those
Okay.
inputs. Yeah. Continue.
Then my mother felt very happy with the match. So she and Daula Masi went to Pasni
I think
Maharaj.
we missed a paragraph. Did we? Or
No. We finished that. Yeah.
we finished? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Correct. You're right.
Then my mother felt very happy with the match. So she and Daula Masi went to Upasni Maharaj, who, on being asked, was also quite pleased with it. He allowed the three of them, my mother, Piroza, and Daula Masi, to go to Bombay to discuss the matter with Baba in Manzile Meem, while I stayed on at Sakori. Who is the girl here? 19 years. That is Mehera's sister. Yeah.
Mehera's sister. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. At Manzile Meem, they greeted Baba and had his darshan. After being told, Baba also agreed to the match. Called Rustam, he said, they must see each other. So Rustam and Piroza met each other and agreed to marry. In early March 1923, my sister's engagement to Rustam was held in Manzile Meem in Baba's presence. Wow, amazing. Jai Baba. Up till then, my sister's name had been Piroza, but at Manzile Meem, Baba changed it to Freni. Baba had a younger sister called Freni, whom he had loved, dearly loved, but she had died when she was still a child. Now Baba said to my sister, I loved my sister Freni very much, and I give you her name Freni. And so, from that day, my sister was called Freni. The wedding was to take place in Ahmednagar, where Rustam's family lived, on 9th May 1923. Rustam had told Baba that he would marry only if Baba attended the wedding, and Baba had promised to come. This is why Baba left Manzile Meem and came to Ahmednagar. My mother was very busy making arrangements for the wedding, so I stayed on at Sakori with Freni Masi. I think this was Baba's first visit to Ahmednagar. And as I remember, he came to Ahmednagar for the first time for a marriage, so this must be the one. Rustam had arranged for Baba and his mandali from Manzile Meem to stay at
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. I think Meherabad is already referred to in the previous chapter. So Baba has already come to Ahmednagar. Maybe that's another wedding that you're thinking of. Because even in the earlier chapter, there were references to Mehera already being in Meherabad. So that means it's post Ahmednagar, right?
No, I think let's refer it offline.
Okay,
Because maybe the reference is there, but from date perspective, I'm seeing chronologically, this was the year Baba came for the first time to Meherabad.
23.
1923 we are talking of, right?
Yeah.
That references could be there with some other context. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Rustam had arranged for Baba and his mandli from Manzile Meem to stay at what was then called Khushru's quarter. That's the Kuchu quarter is now the center, yeah, the King's Road, yeah, and which was now the trust office and named Meher Nazar. It was owned at that time by Rustam's family, though they had stayed, they stay, though they stayed not stayed there, but in a new three-story house nearby called Sarosh Manzil. Khushru Khushru quarters had been empty for some time and rather dilapidated and in need of repair. When Baba and his party arrived in Ahmednagar some days before the wedding, the repairs had not been finished and they could not stay there. Rustam had arranged for Baba to stay for a few days at Happy Valley near what is called Mehrazad, and a place where Ram and Sita had rested so long ago. Oh, what a connection. When Khushru quarters was ready, Baba with his mandali returned to Ahmednagar. They stayed at Khushru quarters and a few wedding guests who were close family members or friends stayed with Rustam's family at Sarosh Manzil. The rest of the guests stayed at the nearby Parsi fire temple, which has space for many guests. Now, Adi K. Irani was staying not with Baba at Khushru quarters, but with his family at Sharoz Manzil. Yeah, you can go up. Even more. Yeah. Every morning, Adi would come to visit Baba, and Baba would ask him for any news. On this particular morning, Adi told Baba that a guest had made some derogatory remarks about Baba. I do not know what they were. I was not there. I only know the gist of it. Baba was very upset. I have been invited to this wedding. I have only come here to please Rustam, and they behave like this. Baba immediately got up and started to walk out of the compound. It was early morning, just after breakfast, and the mandli were not yet ready for the day. Some were in the bathroom, some just finishing their tea. Their tea glasses, as they had their tea in aluminum glasses, were dirty and their bedding rolls were untied. Those who saw Baba leaving shouted to others, "Come quickly, Baba has left." They were frightened that they would lose sight of Baba, and they came running from everywhere, out of bathrooms and bedrooms, stuffing dirty glasses and plates into their bags, and hastily tying up bedding rolls. After Baba, they all came running, and they caught up with him on Station Road. It was just after the First World War, and at that time it was so quiet. There were no motor cars, no buses, no trucks in sight. Occasionally a bullock cart would pass by, or a bicycle, or two or three people. There was no traffic and hardly any houses along the road. Baba was walking very quickly along this road which leads to the railway station. The Mandli thought that Baba, because he was so upset, would leave Ahmednagar. But when they came to the fork in the road, Baba did not continue straight towards the station, but paused for a second and turned to the left. Now they decided that he was taking them to Dhond, the next town along this road, and many miles away. But after 5 or 6 miles, Baba stopped under a neem tree, around which a stone seat had been made. Nearby was a well, and after Baba rested there for a while, he said, "We are thirsty. The well is so close, but how shall we draw water from it? Ask the first person you see to bring us a rope and a bucket." One man came by, and Mandli stopped him and told him, "We need some water. Please help us. Bring a pail and a rope so we can draw drinking water from this well." So this man ran to his home in nearby Arangaon village, and he brought bucket and rope. Baba and all the Mandli had some water. This man was a Hindu, and he was very fortunate to serve Baba like this. His name was Mr. Patel, and he became quite devoted to Baba. It was his bullocks that later pulled Baba's car out of the bog in Toka. When it began to when
So
it began to get
just to
yeah
interrupt. So, like you said, this is the first visit to
yes
Mehrabad.
yes
And maybe the earlier reference is chronologically out of whack
yeah
because
yes
the Colonel Irani is asking, why are you staying in Mehrabad, right? So maybe chronologically
yeah
there's a little bit of a mismatch, but this is very clearly the first time Baba's
yes
in
yes
Mehrabad.
yes
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Keep going.
Then it began to get dark, and Baba said, "We need some light. Ask the next person you see to bring us a lantern." Another man came by, and when asked for a lantern, he ran to the village and bought Baba a lantern. Baba blessed this man and said, "May there always be light in your home." This man was a converted Christian. By this time, Rustam had discovered that Baba had left Khushu quarters, and he began to search frantically for him, asking everyone, "Have you seen a man who looks like this?" describing Baba. Eventually, someone pointed Rustam towards Arangaon. Rustam was so relieved that Baba had not left by train. He followed the road until he found Baba. "Baba, if you don't come back to Amarnagar, I won't marry. You promised you would be there. So please, Baba, forgive those people. At least come to the wedding," he begged. So Baba returned to Ahmednagar, and he did not stay in Khushu quarters where he had previously been, but at Sharosh Manzil in the very top room. It was a lovely little room with its own entrance, so the Mandli could come and go and bring Baba his meals. As all four sides of the room were half glass and half wall, it had a bird's eye view of Ahmednagar. Baba attended the wedding, and Rustam felt happy. Deciding my destiny, May 1923. I did not attend my sister's wedding, and this was how that happened. As I have said, prior to the wedding, my mother was very busy with all the arrangements to be made, and so she had me stay in Sakori at Upasni Maharaja's ashram. Okay.
Just before my mother came to Sakori to take me to Ahmednagar for the wedding, my knee quite suddenly became very swollen, and it was so painful that I could hardly walk. I had not fallen, and nothing had happened to cause this swelling. It had just appeared. Maharaj told me to have Durga Mai, the woman disciple who had been sent to Upasthi Maharaj from Sai Baba, put warm poultices on it, but they did not help the swelling. When my mother arrived to take me to Ahmednagar for the wedding, Maharaj told her, but she cannot walk and she is lumping badly. How is she going to attend the wedding? And she is quite happy here. Why do you want to take her? Won't the marriage take place without her? Anyway, it wouldn't look nice for her to limp in sari on such a fine occasion. Maharaj showed his disinclination to send me, and my mother did not want to disobey him. He knew not to go against the wishes of the perfect master, so she agreed to leave me at Sakori, although it was very awkward for her to do this. It was my only sister's wedding, and the whole family would wonder where I was. So I was not at the wedding. The next part is awkward to me to tell, but I have to, as it explains why I was not to attend my sister's wedding. There was a young man, some relatives on my father's side, who had not seen me since I was 8 years old. After that, we had had no connection with each other. We never met, although he may have once seen me from afar at a wedding. Oh sorry, 1 minute. Yeah. When I was 14. Now this family felt that it should be convenient if he, suitable girl, announced their engagement at my sister's wedding at our families, as our families would be present there. In those days, there was no courtship as there in the West. When a suitable match was arranged, the engagement was quickly announced, and at that time, gifts and rings were exchanged. When the boy's family asked him whom he wanted to marry, he gave my name, and they came to the wedding with a gold ring and gold sari and other engagement gifts. But I was not there. Go up a bit. Yeah. Now, amongst Zoroastrians, another little ceremony takes place about 8 days after the wedding, where the bride and bridegroom put sweets in each other's mouths and also perform some other rituals. Baba had returned to Mehera after the wedding, and before this next ceremony, my mother visited him there for darshan. Baba asked whether I would be coming for this ceremony, and my mother replied, no, Upasni Maharaj would not let her come to the wedding, so he would not want her to come for this. Baba told her, tell Upasni Maharaj that she is your daughter and bring her. My mother was so scared. How was she going to say this to Upasni Maharaj? But she said yes to Baba. She did not realize it. But Baba was testing her to see if it was to be Maharaj's word or Baba's word. Whom would she please? So my mother came to Sakori with her heart in her mouth. She asked for a private audience with Maharaj, and they met and talked a little. Then Maharaj asked her why she had come. She replied, I have come to take Mehera with me for the ceremony in Ahmednagar. Then Maharaj said, yes, you can take her. Baba knew that Upasni Maharaj would agree, but he wanted to see if my mother would obey Baba. Now this is what happened next. After my mother brought me to Ahmednagar, where we stayed at Sharosh's Manzil, Baba's message came from Mehrabad to say that Baba's mother, Shirin Mai, Gul Mai, Adi Kirani's mother, my mother, Baba's aunt, Daula Masi, my sister and myself were to come to Meherabad for his darshan. This is the very first time that I was to go down to Bilawes Baba and have his darshan. When we arrived at the post office near the railway line, Baba was at what is now called the old Dharamshala. We waited outside, and when Baba was told that we had come, he came walking very fast across the road and field to meet us. Baba looked very beautiful, striding across the field. His hair, lovely brown shining hair, was quite short, and he was wearing a sadra and a kerchief and his head on his head. Baba quickly entered the post office where there was no furniture at all, just a big cotton carpet on the floor. Baba told us all to come inside. This was in May 1923, and Baba was still talking at that time. Baba's mother greeted him first. She did not bow down to him, Baba, but she did join her hands and then sat in front of him. Gulmai and my mother took darshan next. Then my sister took darshan, followed by Baba's aunt. I saw how they were taking darshan, so I took Baba's darshan too. Last, of course, but I was very shy at that time. Baba's face was so lovely. Just one little glance at him and I felt so happy. Then I sat on the edge of the circle facing him. So this was the first time I saw Baba properly and had his darshan. Baba asked, have all the guests gone? How many have gone and who is left? And my mother replied, only the boy's aunt is still here, meaning the boy who wanted to marry me. The rest of his family have all gone. Baba said, good. And he then asked my mother whether she wanted me to marry this boy. My mother said, yes, it's a very good match. My mother wanted to get both her daughter married and settled so that she would be free to come to stay with Baba and to serve him. Then Shirin Mai gave her opinion and Daula Masi had said something. Then Baba said something and Shirin Mai started to argue a little with Baba. Asked him, why, Meherwan, do you say that? She always called Baba Meherwan or Merog. Okay. And so it went on. It was a serious issue and they were all discussing it quite hotly with Baba until Baba said, why you are all arguing? Why don't you ask Mehera what she wants to do? It's for her to decide. Everyone turned and looked at me. I felt very embarrassed because they were all suddenly staring at me instead of concentrating on Baba. But I felt firm about what to say. I mustered up all my courage and said, I don't want to marry. What? All the older women exclaimed, and they looked at me as if I had gone a little mad. What did you say? They all looked at each other. All right, not this person, then some other person. No, I said, no other person. I don't want to marry at all. Did you hear what she said? Baba asked all the women. Leave it like that. Don't try to persuade her or coax her. And don't bring up that subject again. So I was quite free. These were Baba's orders. How Upasni Maharaj and Baba had saved me. Maharaj from the wedding where I would have been on my own with my family and the boy's family pushing me to marry, and Baba from my leaving for my having to stand up to my elders alone. Baba decided my destiny with all of us in front of him. Har Meher Baba ki jai. So beautiful. Karthik, I think we should once again look at the chronological, maybe from Lord Meher. because immediately during the same stay, they are coming and seeing Baba at Meherabad in the post office building. So it
Correct.
cannot be in that 15 days period. That means Baba had already been to Meherabad before, as you were kind of contemplating. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Yes. Yes.
Or
Yeah.
maybe it's
So I
just
may be
this
wrong.
account. No. Maybe it's just
Yeah.
this account. The way she has probably linked it. We don't know. We will check in lot
Hmm.
next.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yes. Yeah.
Good point.
Maybe it was in 22 that he must have gone before. Yeah. Sometime
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
Karthik, recently there
Jai
was
Baba.
an
Anniversary. Correct.
yes,
So
100th
it
years
is
anniversary.
23.
100.
23, yes,
It
yes.
is
23 only. Ah,
Yes.
yes.
And it
Yeah.
happened in May. It happened in
May,
May of
correct,
this.
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
my mother had also come. Yeah, Jai Baba, correct.
thanks,
Interesting.
Kiran.
Jai
Yeah.
Baba.
So
Yeah.
I remembered that as well. So I think the centenary and that part is correct. So maybe it all happened in such a quick manner, really. Like in few days,
Yeah.
Baba came and
Yeah.
after the wedding, it just settled into Meherabad. Okay, so the
Beautiful account. Very lovely reading, actually. Very interesting.
yes,
And how Baba made Mehera to be hers,
correct,
to be
correct,
his.
correct.
Yeah. So it's very beautiful. Jai Baba.
Yeah,
Karthik,
Gopal.
if I could add just a comment, it's
Sure.
like for the past 1 week, I have also been listening or hearing some suggestions to get married. So
Okay.
every time we do some reading, right? The last weekend and even the weekend before that, something it is definitely related to um, what is happening in my life also. I don't know. Many others may also feel similar resemblance, but definitely something to do with our life comes. It's like a message that Baba is implicitly giving through these readings.
That's very
Yeah.
encouraging. I look forward to some marriage proposals in the coming week then.
Yeah, and we'll come and have a bhajan at the Temple of Silence under the
No,
tree.
no,
Under
no,
the
no, no.
tree we would meet.
No, Sanjay. I'm saying if like Shiva says, all of us are getting the experiences from what happened. I said I look forward to getting a few marriage proposals next week. But
I
yes, of
thought it
course,
was
Shiva,
for
all the best.
Shiva.
Yeah, Shiva, all the best. And yeah, you should get hitched and all the best to you. And Baba will guide you with the right choice, I'm sure.
Jai Baba.
Yeah. Yeah. Mahu, you want to read for the last bit, maybe this
Yeah,
section?
yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I
Jai
can
Baba.
read. Just one comment I like to make about what we read.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I don't know where I read discourses, who knows where I read it. But anyway, all these people that come to Baba's life, especially the inner circle, the 12 plus the 2, it's all designed by him before even he comes in as avatar. And before these people are even born, everything is divine plan. And so, it's just like Mehera had to meet Baba at that age, and Baba meanwhile was working on mother's faith and obedience and so forth. And the fact that she got her knee was swollen and stuff like that, she couldn't stand it. It's all Baba. He created, or maybe Upasni, this episode, so to prevent her from attending that wedding because he knew what's going to happen. It's very interesting how, well, we're going to read more, what Baba went through to save Mehera from the world, not necessarily the man, particularly man, but the world. So she remains completely pure for his work, because he was in the body to do his work. So it's very interesting. So I'll read Baba's Call. This is May 1923 to May 1924. 3 or 4 days after this meeting with Baba at the post office, we all set off by train for Pune. By we, I mean Baba's mother, Dola Masi, the boy's aunt, my mother, myself, and perhaps Gulmai. The train started from the Ahmednagar station, and after some minutes, someone said, "Oh, Mehrabad has come, and we can see Baba." I could not believe that I was seeing Mehrabad from the train. I leaned out the window and saw Baba standing near a wire boundary along the railway track. As the train came near, Baba looked so sweet in his white sadra with the sun shining on him. We were all waving to him, and he was waving to us. And we kept waving to Baba as the train passed by until he became so tiny we could hardly see him. And still he waved to us. A little bit more. Yeah. Then in August 1923, Baba came to Pune, and my mother and I went for his darshan. Baba asked me whether there was anything personal that I wanted to speak to him about. But as I could not think of anything, I replied, "No, Baba." Baba then said, "Do you keep fasts?" I replied, "Yes, Baba. I fast on Ekadasi, 10th lunar day according to Hindu religion. But I'm never quite sure when it is." So Baba told me, "Never mind. From now on, keep fast every Hormuzad Roj and Behram Roj, first and 20th days of the month according to the Zoroastrian calendar." And this I did for many years. As I have said, by now my mother's love for and faith in Baba were such that she wanted to serve him and to be with him always. So when she went to take Baba's darshan, she told him, "Baba, I want to stay with you and serve you always." Baba replied, "How can you serve me? I'm not staying in one place, but when I do decide to stay in one place, then I will call you." Then I went to Ahmednagar from Pune to stay with my sister Freni, who was now married to Rustam. Baba was still traveling, but I did have his darshan once at Kushru quarters when he stopped at Mehrabad for a brief time. Staying with my sister, I found that I did not like family life. Somehow I felt aloof from it. And when Gulmai had to visit Sakon, I went with her. We wanted to stay with Baba, but as I have said, in those very early days, Baba had no women mandali, and he was not settled anywhere.
I think that's a typo. It is Sakori that Gulmai had to visit.
Oh, Gulmai. Oh, yeah, you're right. I didn't know what Sakon is. Yeah. You know, when they scan it, something messes up.
Exactly. The
I
fonts pick up. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Although I think they go through some editing afterwards. I liked the life at Sakori and the atmosphere there. It was so different from family life. There was devotional singing, arti, and meeting with Upasni Maharaj. Upas means fast, and Maharaj means great king. So Upasni Maharaj means the great king who fasted. He was given this name because he fasted for a very long time before he received God realization from Sai Baba. The young Brahmin girls who stayed in the ashram sang songs and played on their drums in the temple. I too joined them and learned to play the little drum called a dolak, the kind that Baba used to play, and we would sing Mirabai songs and Krishna songs, Upasni Maharaj's songs, and Sai Baba songs. We were all just girls. There were no men with us. And while I was there, and while I was there, I also helped to build some small huts for the ashram. Small Khurshid, Suna Masi's daughter, was also there, and we kept each other company. One day we were all in Maharaj's hut, ready for Aarti, when a Brahmin woman came to Maharaj and offered him a gold ring. This woman wanted to put it on Maharaj's finger as a bond and expression of love. She tried to take his hand, but Maharaj got upset and refused to permit it, saying, "What are you trying to do? Can you see I'm wearing a Ghani sack? I'm a fakir, and you want me to wear a gold ring?" She replied, "Maharaj, I'm offering this to you." He told her, "I don't want any gold. Put it down." She looked so dejected that Maharaj finally told her to put the ring on his little toe. After Aarti, the men took darshan and left. Then it was the women's turn. Darshan means bowing down and putting one's head on Maharaj's feet, then joining hands to him. The ring was still on his toe, and the Brahmin girls this time were taking longer to bow down, and they were lingering afterwards. I felt inside that they were wondering to whom Maharaj would give the ring, and that each one was hoping it would be she. After most of the girls had taken darshan, I approached Maharaj. As I lifted my head after darshan, Maharaj said, "Wait." He took the ring off his toe and put it on my finger. He told me, "Keep it on." Yeah, he told me, okay, where are we? Good. He, yeah, keep it on, wear it, and never take it off. I was very surprised that he had given it to me, but it fitted my finger perfectly. I bowed to Maharaj and left. A little later, at the beginning of 1924, while I was still at Sakori, Baba went to stay at the Borusha building in Dadar, a suburb of Bombay. Soon after, Baba sent Gulmai to Sakuri to bring a small Khurshid and myself to Bombay to be near him. When Gulmai told me the news that we were to go to Bombay, I went to say goodbye to Upasni Maharaj and have his darshan. As I was leaving, Durga Mai told me not to go. She said that the ring had been given by Maharaj to me and that I should stay, but I insisted on going to Baba. In Bombay, we stayed at a small Khurshid's parents' house in Irani Mansions, Dadar, and my mother joined us there from Pune. In the evenings, we went to Burucha building to be with Baba, and there we would see Gustaji coming Baba's, oh, there we see Gustaji combing Baba's golden brown shining hair. How we admired his lovely hair, so soft and full, and how we started at his beauty. I remember one day Baba with Gustaji came to Irani mansions and he asked Khurshid to sing and play the harmonium for him. Gustaji sang too, and Baba enjoyed the singing, swaying his head to the rhyme of the music. Before Baba left, we served him tea. Baba now left for Persia, and my mother, my sister, and I returned to our home on Tadiwala Road, Pune. In the evenings, we would sit by Baba Jan. Many of her followers sat with her, then because they had to go to work in the mornings. We went in the evening for a different reason. It shocked the Zoroastrian community to see us sitting with Baba Jan, whom they were also against. Zoroastrians coming and going along the road where Baba Jan was seated recognized us in broad daylight, and they would say to each other, "What are they doing here? What are they doing there? Why are they sitting with this old woman instead of going to the fire temple?" My mother's reply was, "Never mind. Let them say what they like. We don't care." She was not afraid, and she did go to Baba Jan in the mornings to take fruit and vegetables from the nearby markets. Franny Masi, who was close to Baba Jan, went with her. Baba Jan was seated on a seat that Baba had had made for her after he was got realized and had come from Sikori. She was of a very advanced age now, and it was not good for her to sit on the ground in all weather. As is the Indian custom, the men devotees sat on one side of her and the women on the other. Babajan always sat so that she was turned more towards the men. People brought her food, People brought food for her, and Babajan used to send someone to bring tea from a nearby tea stall. She often gave each one prasad and sometimes hot tea too. On many evenings, Qawwali songs were sung. It was a very beautiful sight. We never refer to Babajan as she, but always as Babajan. Inwardly, Babajan was so strong. She was stronger than any man. She was like an emperor. She looked so beautiful with her fair skin and bluish eyes. Babajan hardly spoke, and when she did, it was very softly. People would talk to her, and she would sit and listen and nod her head, sometimes turning to see who was sitting amongst the women. I remember one evening when Babajan turned to look at the women. Oh, I remember one evening when Babajan turned to look at the women. She looked at each one and then a little longer at me.
I think she
I
got
was so
disconnected.
surprised. Yeah, I was so surprised that she would look at me, and I felt very shy. Babajan hardly ever smiled, but now as she looked at me, she had a slight very sweet smile on her face, as if she knew me. Then Baba John turned away. One
Let's
evening,
pause here. Let's pause here. We are out of time as
Yeah.
well. So maybe
Yeah.
it's another page and a half. We will pick it up from the next week. Lovely reading these two chapters. I mean, a little more than a chapter, but beautiful to see that period. And like Shiva says, may it connect to each one of us in different ways, as Baba always does. And looking forward to continuing this next weekend. And of course, tomorrow we have discourses. And
I
maybe,
have one comment to make, Kartik.
sure.
Because I read Lord Meher during this time. The first time that Baba went to Persia is 1931. So the way it's written in Lord Meher, Baba intended to go, and I think he went to some borders like Zahedan or so, but he was not able to, or he didn't, come to the country. He just returned. So when Mehera says, when Baba came back from Persia, Baba did not enter the Persia. He intended to go, as I said, but he changed his mind. Perhaps it wasn't the right time. I wanted to say that.
Interesting. So I think from a historical or factual standpoint, there might be inconsistencies here. Obviously, Lord Meher prevails, given that it was done with that intent and that level of detail. But good point you bring up about Persia. So I'll stop recording here. We can switch on cameras and maybe talk for a bit. Whoever wants,